Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Coming up, magnificent St Mirren cause a party in Paisley, with Celtic losing their 38-game unbeaten run. It's make or break for Scotland. Can Clarke ignite a spark with 3 games left to clinch a playoff for Euro 2024? And we speak to fans from Ukraine and Ireland to tell us what to expect. Yes, hello, I am your host again. I'm back. Andrew Slaven is my name, and joining me on this show, someone who queues for no one, especially our tickets for Scotland games. It's West Ham United senior producer and devoted Tartan Army foot soldier, Laura Brannan. Hello, mate, how are you?
Hello. God, it's been a while since I queued for Scotland tickets. Remember those days? Up at 4 a.m, standing outside Hampden in the dark. And you know what? See, at the end of that, I got a game to go to.
Well, you can tell us about that a bit later, because we have another guest. Finn's still busy on his travels, but we've got Tartan Army writer, contributor to the famous Tartan Army magazine, and of course he's an author of Scotland's Swedish Adventure. Welcome aboard, John Blaesdale.
Hello guys, thanks very much for having me on. And yeah, it's interesting, Laura's talking about queuing for tickets. Queuing for tickets, Ticketmaster underneath Central Station at 6 o'clock in the morning for the Holland game, and getting those tickets is what prompted me to be a Scotland Supporters Club member, so thank goodness I don't need to do that anymore.
Oh, lovely. I've got no ticketing QE references from my side, but I appreciate both of your stories. But speaking of stories, have I missed anything major that's maybe happened while I've been away? Can you pick up on anything, or even something from this weekend? Laura, I'll go to you first.
Oh, it's been a quiet few days since you've been away, Andrew, hasn't it? Not much is happening in the world. There's been a few things. A lot of controversy over different sets of supporters.
Controversy in Scottish football?
There's been a few airing their opinions on a certain member of the royal family. I think there's possibility that Celtic could face UEFA sanctions for their fans' banner in their Champions League game during the week. On the flip side of that, though, I don't think Rangers are facing any sanctions for playing England's national anthem, despite being denied permission for it in advance.
It is the UK's national anthem, Laura. Just to point that out.
It's not Scotland's, it's England's. And then there was a wee bit of disruption during the minute silences on Saturday, when Dundee United played Rangers. There was also Hibs fans at the game against Aberdeen, and obviously there was I think probably will be going down as the more infamous one from the weekend, was Celtic's banner and chant during the minute's applause at St Mirren. So yeah, there's quite a few kind of talking points there.
Bloody hell, Laura. I mean, I've got to bring John in, because I think we might get cancelled soon talking about this. I mean, well, actually, we can't get cancelled because we run the show here. It's fine. Yeah, go ahead, John. You next.
I don't know if quiet was the word that you could use over the weekend. Listen, regardless of where you sit with the royal family, and I get there's people who love the monarchy and people who are against the monarchy, but you had a conscious choice as to whether to sit quiet and just let people have their have their place to be respectful. All it was a minute. Just show a wee bit of respect, please.
I'll add some stardust to this. Oh well, I'm going to Scottish League One. There's not much stardust there. Apologies. But did anyone see Queen of the South in the final 10 minutes? They had player manager Willie Gibson bringing on his son Lewis.
It's a nice moment.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I was trying to think
of. How old is he?
Lewis is 17.
Wow.
But yeah, they won 4-1 at the weekend against FC Edinburgh. Good win. But yeah, I just thought that was like a nice little story to take away some of the negative things that you guys keep bringing up.
Another one is, since we're not going to really kind of touch on the European football this week for a change, it's one of the first episodes this season we've not, just a wee nod to Hearts. They were the first non-Old Firm team to win a European group stage game since Aberdeen did it 15 years ago.
And interestingly enough, it's been 15 years since a team at Withfield firm were in a group stage of a European competition, so it would have been kind of hard for someone to win. But that's a tremendous result for Hearts, because they've had a bit of a sticky period. I don't know how this RFS side managed to get a point against Fiorentina. Fiorentina must have been really bad to drop points, because I watched them against Linfield in qualifying and they were absolutely awful. It was just down to Linfield bottling it in the last minute of both games. It cost them, and obviously a penalty shout. But it's still a terrific result for Hearts to go there and put in an accomplished performance and coming away with an excellent result. And it's good for Scottish football. What an occasion that'll be when they play Fiorentina at Tynecastle in a couple of weeks' time.
Absolutely. Who would have thought Hearts would be reining in the coefficient points for Scotland? Absolutely excellent. And on that note, let's move on to a roundup of the weekend after this.
And Stevie May! Bedlam! Chaos! Euphoria in the away stand! Blue limbs everywhere.
Right, okay. Time for a roundup of the weekend. And I'm going to start with Laura before I come to you, John, because I'm going to give you a chance to choose wisely here. There is one team we should mention first. Who should we mention first, Laura?
And that is St Mirren.
No. John, who should we talk about first?
Hibs?
No, it's not. It's Dumbarton, because they are the only SPFL side with a 100% record. Get in there, lads. Right, now on to St Mirren 2, Celtic 0. The champions have lost their incredible unbeaten record, but all we can really do is praise and give all the plaudits to Stephen Robinson's men. They were absolutely outstanding in this game, but played it so simply and let Celtic be their own downfall.
Most of the media will, point out about Celtic's performance, but let's give credit where it's due. St Mirren were absolutely tremendous on the day. Yes, the stats might show that they only had 4 shots to Celtic's 18, but what did Celtic really do with 18 shots? I don't recall Carson having to make a couple of saves. St Mirren had a game plan, they were brave. There's not many teams who'll go 2 up front against Celtic this season, and they managed to do that, and the 2 up front managed to cause a lot of problems, and they took their chances, and I've no doubt that Stephen Robinson, when they saw that Celtic team, saw that they made 6 changes which Celtic didn't really need to make, and thought they think they've won this game before they even step in the park. Let's go show them. And my goodness, they put in a terrific performance, and well done to St Mirren, and up to 4th in the league, and I predict them to finish bottom, so they're making a good mockery of some people's predictions.
They were, that you could tell very early on that St Mirren were up for it mentally. But Laura, Stephen Robinson's changed teams' fortunes around before. You know it all well at Motherwell.
Yeah, and he's waited a long time for this win against Celtic. He's come close. There's been some unfortunate games. One especially, I remember there was a kind of controversial last-minute penalty that took the points away from Motherwell. There's been some heartbreaking games as well at Hampden Cup games. So this is a long time coming for him to get a result, and the added bonus is a lot of those players that suffered those defeats with Motherwell were in that team that beat Celtic as well. You could tell they were up for it right from the start. St Mirren have a team of very experienced boys, like Mark O'Hara taking the captain's armband, scoring the opening goal, Declan Gallagher, Scotland international. There's big players in that team, and it was just one of those days where it just clicked. Yes, okay, Celtic, an off day, a European hangover, whatever you want to put it down to, but on the flip side of that, St Mirren were excellent. Every single player to a man played absolutely outstanding, and to the point where when they got their second goal, it didn't even look like Celtic were pushing for it. It didn't feel like that onslaught was coming towards the end.
But even before the start of the second half, I mean, they scored at great times in the game, just before the end of the first half and right at the start of the second, and Celtic were completely rattled.
Postecoglou will think again when it comes to future games as to whether to make that many changes, because it'll be a reminder to him that although Celtic have by far and away the best squad in the league, if they don't have the right attitude getting into the game, then they're going to slip up, and No, I think if Celtic are looking for any kind of excuse, maybe they could point out the kit that they were wearing.
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it? Actually, fair point.
That was a bizarre choice. I mean, I'm obviously of an age where, growing up in the 90s, you saw occasionally Celtic and St Mirren wearing their normal home kits, green and white hoops versus black and white stripes. I think that would have been less of a kit clash than what actually happened on Sunday.
They were both playing. I mean, it's like a really pale green top, I think it was, but it almost looked like they were both playing black and white. I don't know. There you go. I'm not looking for the excuses either here, by the way. But you made a good point. Well, to give St Mirren fans more plaudits, Laura, you've just put a very good tweet up.
So yeah, I think there was a bit of a kind of stooshy when St Mirren announced that they weren't going to be giving out the 2 stands behind the goals to Celtic and Rangers when they came visiting this season. But the numbers to actually come out of Sunday's game is quite interesting, because although they gave 1,600 less tickets out because they weren't going to Celtic fans, they actually had 1,300 more home fans than normal. So yeah, okay, a drop of 300, but when you're bringing in that many more home supporters, it'll take time to grow, but if they can grow the home support, then it's a success for them. That's a win for them.
Excellent news for Rangers, of course, who went into the weekend 5 points adrift of Celtic. They're now 2 points adrift after they won 2-1 against Dundee United. And it was obviously a happy birthday to Antonio Cholak, who got 2 goals in that game. 29 he was. Congratulations, you've made it. But this was obviously a big game for Rangers. They could have lost 4 games in a row. They haven't. It's not been going well for Van Bronckhorst. A lot of Rangers fans not too happy with their European exploits so far. But it just alleviates the pressure, Laura, that Rangers have had in recent weeks.
Going into the game against Napoli, there felt like Van Bronckhorst was under a lot of pressure. And I think the manner in which they lost that game maybe spared him slightly. Like there's problems there. I don't think anyone can deny that. Looking at Rangers, they look like a kind of shaded side. They look like if someone actually stands up and says boo to them, they're going to fall. And it kind of takes that kind of strength in opposition to really kind of stand up to them and make a game of it. And to be fair to Dundee United, they did that. They came back into the game and got into the kind of closing stages. They looked dangerous. So this really was a massive 3 points for them in the context of how things have been going recently.
Absolutely. And worth pointing out that Gio Van Bronckhorst had also given some youth a chance in this game too. Credit to Charlie McCann, who's came up, got his first start for Rangers, and Leon King also started. So 2 academy players there for Rangers. But moving on, Hibs 3, Aberdeen 1, and only one thing to really talk about, John, is probably the sending off was the key moment, because Aberdeen had taken the lead through Lewis Duca. Great little header, but Liam Scales, 2 yellow cards, and a very unhappy Mr. Goodwin.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one place we really start on this one, and it's going to sound like sour grapes from an Aberdeen supporter right now, but the game changes on that penalty instance. So I don't know what the Hibs head of performance is on when he's saying that it's not a game changer. Of
Did
course,
he actually
it's a
say
game
that?
changer. The score was 1-0 to Aberdeen at this point. Hibs get awarded a penalty, the opposition get a man sent off, and Hibs score from the resultant spot kick. At what point is that not a game-changing opportunity? The decision is awful. If anything, it's a free kick to Aberdeen, but you could argue that, just let the play go on and have a quick word with them. Portis is the one that's got Scales in the headlock, has tried to pull him down, ended up falling over himself. Whether he's cheated or not is another thing. But that said, it's also now showing Aberdeen's problems with the transfer market. They brought in a lot of players, but they never covered the right areas. We only have 2 centre-backs, one of whom can't play against Celtic and is now going to be missing from this Kilmarnock game. We've seen already that Ross McCrory is a different player. In centre midfield, he is outstanding most weeks. At centre-back, he's absolutely hopeless. We need to use these next couple of weeks to try and see who's in the free transfer market and bring someone in for the Kilmarnock game. We've left ourselves massively short in an area where last season was a major problem, and we can't just depend on Scales and Stewart all season.
Motherwell Hearts, Laura. Not a good day for Motherwell from a team who pretty much dominated this game, but it ended 3-0 to the visitors.
This scoreline does It flatters hearts completely. To lose this game by 3 goals just was an injustice for Motherwell. The amount of chances they had, especially the first half. The first half was good in terms of complete end-to-end, great entertainment, really even game. And the second half, it was all Motherwell. So many chances, so many opportunities. Obviously, a goal disallowed. There was a chance where they hit one post, got the rebound, hit off the other post. So many unlucky instances. Also unlucky with a few boys going off injured as well. It just felt like one of those days. It was just nothing was going right for them.
Yeah, goals from Lawrence Shankland and Alan Forrest, who instantly both of those scored in the European tie as well. Just to round up quickly, elsewhere, St Johnstone drew 0-0 with Ross County, which oddly Malcolm Mackay was punching the air at full time for a 0-0. That is weird. Livingston beating Kilmarnock 1-0 thanks to Christian Montano, who likes to be scoring goals these days. So that's 4 wins and 7 for Livingston. Kilmarnock really struggling still to get used to things up in this level. Looking further down, Partick Thistle 2, Cove Rangers 2. This was Ian McCall. My God, he is a fiery man. He was raging in this game purely because they didn't win it. But 2 goals from Mark Reynolds for Cove Rangers in the final 10 minutes of the match, even though Thistle ended up top of the table.
No, I can understand why he's raging, to be fair. Look, they're 2-0 up, they're going to the top of the table, everything's going great. It's just, you crumble like that. You must be so angry to see your team do that. The only kind of silver lining there for him is that Ayr United lost to Wraith Rovers. But wow, I love to see that passion from you, McCall, because we all feel it. We all know exactly what he's going through. So
yeah, there was goals aplenty across all the divisions, but another 5-goal thriller at Dundee. Inverness taking 3 points, a third win in 5 games for them, and then we go further down into League One. Airdrie 5, Clyde 0. Derby drama in this game. Danny Lennon absolutely slammed the referee because he overruled the linesman's decision in the opening goal. The linesman flagged it for offside, and if you look at the footage, Danny Lennon says it himself, he's about 5 to 6 yards offside. It's blatant. So really bizarre, but unsurprising refereeing decisions in Scottish football. But Airdrie remained second. And then I have mentioned this already earlier on in the podcast, but Queen of the South are back 4-1 against FC Edinburgh. And just a lovely little moment, Lewis Gibson coming on when it was 4-0 to play with his dad, who's the manager. And I just think that's nice. Laura, you like that, don't you?
Nah. Nah, it's lovely. It's a good story. You get some players who just don't want to have a connection with their dads. They don't want to live off that his name and live in his shadow and his reputation.
Sure.
You get some boys who absolutely don't mind it at all and actually do want to push it. So no, it's nice. It's a nice wee story.
John, are you a fan of player managers?
Not overly, Andrew, to be perfectly honest, because you just how can you concentrate on managing the team at the sidelines when you're on the far? You just got to hope he's got a good number 2 alongside him. But I mean, that result just shows how bonkers Scottish football can be. I mean, that was a result you never saw coming. Edinburgh City absolutely pumped Airdrie a couple of weeks ago, 6-0 away from home. Yes, they were up against 10 men, but still to beat a team at the top of the league 6-0 away was an absolutely tremendous result. From them to go for that to being hammered 4-1, and Queen of South had not had a good start to the season. You know, they'd only picked up 5 points from the first 6 games, which wasn't good. But that might well kick Queens on. You know, they've got some players back. They've got Scott Fox in goal, which I think is a good signing for that level. So maybe they will push up the table, and you'll be pleased to hear that, Andrew.
We're back, John, okay? We're back. Before we move on as well, I mean, loads of goals in League Two as well. I mean, we just, if we had more time in the podcast, we'd absolutely go into it more. But with it being international break, which we're going to talk about later, there is Scottish Challenge Cup action on Saturday, which I think is a really good opportunity for anyone who's not got tickets to the Scotland game to go out and support your local team. But we will move on, because international duty coming up next.
Marshall has saved! Yes! One big yes!
Just 3 months after our humbling at Hampden at the hands of Ukraine, we have the chance to make amends for a performance which ended our chances for a first World Cup appearance since 1998. I was only 10. Yes, Ukraine will be back in Scotland on Wednesday night in what is being billed in my family household as Let's Ruin Andrew's Birthday. Yep. So yeah, before Steve Clarke's men host the Republic of Ireland on Saturday, and then it's another meeting with the group leaders in the UEFA Nations League. So all games, let's face it, guys, are an absolute must-win. We've got 3 games. We have to win at least the first 2. But Laura, these Nation League games, they are important.
Oh, I feel like a broken record every time I talk about the Nations League. They are massive games.
They are.
Let's stop this stigma of it being, oh, it's just a friendly, oh, it's just a Nations League game. It's not just anything. Right, I'm going to say it again, right? This is why the Nations League is so important, okay? Firstly, if we win our group, we secure a playoff place for Euro 2024. It's our best chance of getting to the Euros. And it's going to be a bloody good Euros as well. It's held in Germany. We want to be there. The other reasons are, if we win the group, we get promotion to League A for the next tournament. Okay, now that means it makes the World Cup 2026 qualifiers even easier because the majority of teams in League A are going to qualify the more authentic way. And also, if we top the group as well, another reason is we will be the second seeds for the Euro 2024 qualifiers. So by winning the group, we not only seal a playoff place, which gives us a second chance, it also gives us an easier route in the other qualifiers. So overall, it just means it's a lot easier to get to Euro 2024. So why would you not take this seriously? These are 3 huge must-win games.
John was clapping in our little Zoom chat there. He's obviously a big fan of your assessment there, Laura. John?
Absolutely. I mean, these are key for sides like Scotland's. You know, ideally you want to qualify within the first 2 places in the European Championship qualifying group, but it's nice to have that backup, and we saw the reaction when we did manage to qualify through this route. So it's absolutely imperative that we try and finish top of this group. I mean, Laura's obviously talked about, you know, the positives of going into the A-League and facing more prestigious nations and giving ourselves a better chance of, you know, I mean, that pot 2 seeding is going to be so crucial. I know the last time we were in pot 2 was the George Burley campaign, and we'll just skip over that. But not in normal circumstances under the right manager, it does give you a better chance of a good draw that will give you a better chance of qualifying. So why would you not want to be in that position?
The good thing with this Nations League, it's different. This is the more confusing thing because it's different when you're doing the World Cup route as it is to the Euros route. So this is the same route that we did when we qualified for Euros in 2020. And what it means is even if we don't win our group and book that playoff spot, we still have a chance. So it's not a case of, okay, fine, we've come second in the group, it's all over. It's not all over because it means that if teams above us then qualify the other way next year, then it can be handed down to us again. And as it stands, we are currently the 7th best team in League B. That can change. So, as I say, even if all hope is lost of winning the group, it doesn't mean it's all over.
So obviously, let's talk about the squads because I feel like the most important game out of the 3 is just the next one, Wednesday night, my birthday. Ryan Fraser's back. I don't know what you guys think about this, and I'll go to you, Laura, first as well, because he didn't cover himself in glory a wee while back, but Steve Clarke is never afraid to make big calls, and he's brought him back.
Yeah, this surprised me, more so for timing than anything else. I never really have any expectation in Scotland managers holding grudges. That's a supporters thing, issue to take up than the actual manager themselves. But just for context here, Ryan Fraser pulled out of the squad last November when we played Moldova and Denmark through injury. But he was then seen training with the Newcastle squad just days later. And to be back involved again with his team, it just looked very much like he couldn't be bothered with Scotland setup. That annoyed a lot of fans, and the feeling was you're not welcome back again, if that's the attitude you've got. I never really expected Steve Clarke to hold the same attitude. and he has obviously welcomed him back. For me though, like, I think you all kind of can guess where I stand on this, but for me it's the timing. I just think for massive games at the end of the qualifying campaign, do we really need him?
Interesting. I mean, I don't think he'll start, Laura. You probably don't think he'll start either.
No, I don't. And he would be there as backup, just backup. Why rock the boat for backup?
John, do you think he'll start?
I don't necessarily think he'll start the game. Because I don't see where he fits in this formation, but he is someone that could be useful if we do manage to change it on odd occasion. Now, Steve Clarke did make that change in the Israel game away from home, where he changed to the 4-2-3-1 and Fraser was playing as a winger, and Fraser scored in that game. It was a very good finish. So he gives you that kind of option there. I get, the people that don't think Ryan Fraser should be brought back in, and I'm not a Ryan Fraser fan from a club perspective, but I'll keep that for another day. But Steve Clarke's had the chat with him, and he has apologised to Steve Clarke. So as far as I'm concerned, as long as that's been done, then that's fine by me, and I know that won't be popular amongst everyone else. But at the end of the day, Steve Clarke's judged in Scotland results, and he needs his best players available. The one thing that really worries me is our lack of goals. I mean, Lyndon Dykes 1 goal in 10 appearances in the Championship. Christie hasn't scored or had an assist yet since he came up in the Premier League with Bournemouth. Fraser, although he's played all 5 games for Newcastle, hasn't scored, hasn't set up a goal either. I mean, Shea Adams is also in good form with 4 out of 9. But other than Shea, there's no one that's really stepped up. And interestingly, I know this won't resonate much with the Tartan Army. Ollie McBurney has 4 and 8, yet he's been left out. So there's food for thought there. But
my fear with Scotland has always been goals. I think it's been all Scotland fans' fears for a long time. Lyndon Dykes seemed to be the answer. It never was for me, and I felt, he had proved me wrong in many occasions. But I never thought of him as being a high goal scoring centre forward for Scotland. We get into opportunities, but we never seem to be that clinical in front of goal. And you've just described all of those options, and I am quite concerned, I have to admit. And it does lead me to the question of, let's say we get 1 point or say 3 points out of the next 3 games. Does this put a lot of pressure under Steve Clarke, John?
I think there's no doubt he's going to be under pressure if he's not already. I don't think he's under pressure in the fact that his job's going to, he's going to lose his job before the Euros, because he's got that contract for the rest of the Euros. But I think a lot of the goodwill is waning. I think some of the credit in the bank is expiring on the back of 2 of those games in June. I mean, that game against Ukraine with so much at stake to put in that performance was such a massive letdown. I mean, the players just didn't turn up on the night, and as we spoke about earlier, Ukraine had their game face on, and we just I don't know if we get caught up in the occasion, but it was just a terrible performance. And then to follow that up with in my opinion, one of the worst performances, certainly in the top 5, worst performances of all time in the Scotland national team, against an Ireland side who were on their knees at this point, who were not looking good. It's one of the worst Ireland sides in my lifetime anyway, was just absolutely pitiful. And this is where Steve Clarke and being rigid with 3-5-2 comes into question as well, because every substitution he made in all those games was like for like. There was no tweaking in the system. There was no alteration to a system that wasn't working. And it just goes to show that when Kieran Tierney is out of the team, there's a problem. But even if you look at the Armenia game, up until the red card, they were the better side that night. And who knows what would have happened if it was 11v11 second half. We might have scraped a win. We certainly wouldn't have won the game as comfortable as we ended up doing. But that red card, which was the right decision, changed the game and saved Clarke from a bit of fight that he would have got had we continued the same way we were the previous 43 minutes of that game.
Absolutely. We started under Steve Clarke with so much positivity. It did feel like there was a wind of change. But ultimately, I don't know where our kind of best way of playing is. I don't feel like those games gave me any sort of idea that we're going in the right direction. So I'm going into this next game totally unsure. of what Scotland team I'm actually going to see.
And I feel that's doing it a wee bit of an injustice, because I feel like we've seen a very set structure and team from Steve Clarke. You don't get a lot of surprises in his starting 11. You don't get a lot of surprises with his shape or anything. The only real kind of question I think going into this one is, with Andy Robertson out injured, do you keep the same shape with three at the back, which was brought in to accommodate Tierney and Robertson, but do you then keep Tierney in that left of the three and bring somebody in to replace Robertson, or do you move Tierney into the wide role? And I think that is kind of the question of where things will change or stay the same.
I think the issue in that formation is more galling when Kieran Tierney isn't there, and we saw that over the summer games. That was where you have the debate, we need to make a change, because if you look at Scotland's record with Tierney in the team, we're winning or drawing more games than we're losing, and he is so vital to how that formation works. Quite frankly, if Kieran Tierney is not left centre back in that formation, it doesn't work. And you can argue Tierney could also go left wing back, because that's his position, that's where he plays for Arsenal. But in my opinion, even though he's not an actual centre back, he is our best centre back, and we need him in that formation if we want it to work.
Very interesting. I think there's a lot of questions, and I guess we'll only see the answers on ITV, because if you don't have Premiere, it's going to be shown on ITV, which is pretty cool and free. So I think it's best now we probably hear from the other camps that we're going to be seeing, and we'll start with Ukraine before we hear from Ireland.
Football, bloody hell.
Okay, to give us a bit more of a lowdown on what's been going on in Ukrainian football, in particular the Ukrainian national team, I'm delighted to say we're joined by Ukrainian football journalist Andrew Todos. Andrew, how are things?
Thanks for having me on. All good, thanks. Looking forward to an intense next week in the Nations League. I think it's going to be very full on, as it always is.
Yeah, 100%, mate. 100. Are you going to Hampden on Wednesday, or are you going up the day before?
So I'm going up the day before, got a bit of media work to do, but then I'll be in Krakow as well for the return leg as well. So it's all a bit of a busy travelling week.
Amazing. And forgive me for saying this, but that sounds like a fairly West London accent to me.
It is. I am of Ukrainian descent, but born and raised in West London, and I started my Ukrainian football blog website about 4 years ago, Zori Londonsk, and have been covering Ukrainian football in English and in recent years for some Ukrainian media sources as well. So sort of grown from there, niche, but everyone's got to have it.
Just before we get into the game on Wednesday coming up, Andrew, can you give us a wee bit of just context as to how football is going in Ukraine just now? Because the league just started up again recently, didn't it?
Absolutely. So towards the end of August this year, the league restarted after 6 months when it was meant to restart after the winter break for the 21-22 season. But sadly, obviously, due to the war, etc., that was cancelled prematurely. And now we've got the new 22-23 season. That began behind closed doors, obviously, for obvious reasons due to the war. Also, due to the fact that there are air raid sirens potentially going off and the likes, you've got to make sure that the matches are, I guess, as safe as possible. So having spectators isn't really a thing. And luckily, so far, I think out of 4 match days, there's only been 1 match that has been properly interrupted by air raid sirens. And in the vicinity of where the air raid sirens went off, nothing actually was affected in the grand scheme of things. It just took 4.5 hours to get the game finished rather than 90 minutes. But, it got done in the end. And fingers crossed, once, obviously, the international break finishes, the league continues unabated.
God, that's incredible hearing that. At the time when we played the playoff game in June, there was a lot of talk of minds aren't quite there. There's a wee bit of a distraction, obviously, with what's going on. Do you feel now, several months later, that there is more of a kind of everyone is kind of back tuned into the football again in terms from the players' perspective more than the fans?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously the wars are going on. There's still atrocities happening every day and new things being found out. And obviously that has got an impact on the players. But the fact of the matter is that the game in June was like the first Ukraine match since the war began. So it was like it had a special meaning in the fact that, football's returning, this sort of defiance. And then you add that to the fact that obviously the league since returned and teams are playing in the Champions League, the Europa League, Conference League from Ukraine. So as a whole, I think the players are now more accustomed, first of all, to playing competitive football, which they obviously missed out on prior to June for a fair few months. And yeah, they're all in the swing of things. Some players have moved clubs, others have, have had more experience playing for them since then. So in general, I think it's more normalised for the players that, football is back. And I think whilst it will be an emotional sort of event, as it always is to play for the national team, because it's sort of taken on a new sense of meaning since the 24th of February, I think it will be less intense, obviously, just because of the circumstance and the fact that it's Nations League rather than a World Cup playoff.
Zinchenko looks like he's out for 2 weeks. So I was going to lead into that by kind of letting some of our Scottish listeners, who should we fear of, or should we fear anything?
Zinchenko's obviously out, as you just mentioned. Shaparenko's out, who is quite an influential midfielder. Also, Jorge Bushchan, who's Ukraine's number one, per se, goalkeeper. He's out. And so is Ilya Zabarny will be missing the Hampden game for Ukraine at centre-back. And he's the starting right centre-back. So those are 4 key players that probably would have all been in the starting lineup to face Scotland on Wednesday that aren't involved. So it's going to be difficult. Luckily, I think Ukraine has got the depth in there to replace those players if need be. Ruslan Malinovsky, I think, will probably come in for Shaparenko. You'll see Pikhalyonak, who plays for Dnipro 1. And then in goal, it's a bit of a tough one because Alexander Petrakov, he called up Bushchan, Andriy Lunin, who's Real Madrid's second choice goalkeeper, but doesn't play. So, that's always a factor in things when you're a goalkeeper, especially. You need practice, otherwise you're always a bit rusty. And then Dmitro Rizanik, who plays for Vorskla in the Ukrainian Premier League. But then he's called up also Shakhtar's number one now, Anatoly Trubin, who has been promoted from the under-21s, who arguably have got the more important game, you could say, because they're in the Euro 2023 playoffs this month as well. So I feel the fact that he's called him up from there, he probably is going to start because otherwise it would just seem a bit pointless to bring him up, not play him, and then sort of have the under-21s miss out on their first choice goalkeeper, really. And then at centre-back, I'm trying to think, really. It could be a whole selection of about 3 or 4 players. So I'd probably go for Valeri Bondar, who's been playing a bit for Shakhtar, and he's sort of the centre-back partner for Matvienko anyway. So the players are there. They're probably not as good as the ones that they're replacing, other than Malinovsky, who is a world-class talent. But I think that Scotland have got much higher chances now than probably they showed or had against Ukraine back in June.
What's the kind of atmosphere going to be like? Because, obviously for us going away, you kind of expect it to be a hostile environment, but is it going to be like that, or is it almost kind of going to feel like a neutral venue?
Possibly, because obviously there are a lot of people that live in Krakow in Poland, Ukrainians, who you could say have lived there for a number of years. Even prior to the war breaking out, it's just a place where a lot of economic migrants move to and make their money, etc. So it will be a mix. I don't think that it will be probably as hostile as it could be if the match was in Ukraine, for example, with lots of ultras and all that kind of stuff, because most of them are on the front lines fighting. So yeah, I think it will probably be a bit of a weird one in general. There'll be a lot of children, a lot of women in the stadium, just because that's sort of the demographics that, from a refugee sort of perspective, that have left Ukraine. I don't think it will be as probably as raucous as it possibly could be.
The emotion of this and these next few games, if Ukraine can finish top of this group, will it be quite as matched as it was when, beating Scotland last time around?
To be honest, no. I think that
I love that honesty.
To be honest, obviously, since Ukraine didn't make the World Cup, it's like, oh well, that's the end of the year. Really, wait until the next qualifying campaign. Some people still haven't come to terms of what the Nations League really is yet. Okay, we could get promoted to League A again if Ukraine wins the group, but that's like the next tournament's so far away. So it's just too distant for it to be something sort of actual. So, I mean, people will be tuning in. There should be a crowd. In terms of even the support that's going to come to Hampden this midweek, it's going to be probably a third of the size that he saw back in June, just because slightly less hype. Other people, it's a midweek. It's like, am I traveling up to Glasgow from wherever else I live in the UK for this type of match? One of those, sadly, but nonetheless, I'm still looking forward to it. So I think fingers crossed for a good competitive couple matches.
Okay, time now to hear from Ireland. Irish Football Fan TV, Paul Nealon. How you doing, man?
Oh, good. Thanks very much for having me on.
How is your mood going into this massive match? Because it's huge for both nations, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think at this stage, it's just anytime Stephen Kenny loses a game, everybody's saying that sack the manager. But every time he wins a game, it's like, give him a chance. And it's a majority of fans, I'd say 80 to 90% of fans are on his side and like what he's doing and seeing that what he's trying to do, bringing in young players and trying to change the way we've traditionally played. Since, I suppose, I followed Ireland, we've always been kind of route one, chase the ball down, be hard to beat and try and nick the odd goal. But Stephen Kenny's come in, he's stuck to his beliefs even when, times were bleak.
How big are Ireland taking this tournament and really pushing for that playoff spot?
Well, Stephen Kenny came out a bit brash at the start and saying that he wants to win it. So I think we're taking it as serious as can be. Obviously, it didn't start off too well. The two defeats, we came back obviously against you. I don't want to keep saying that because I feel bad saying that to you. But from that, then the Ukraine game was a decent result as well, taking the lead there and just looking a bit more like ourselves. I think we didn't start so well. But then I think as the games grew on, I think we started to get better. And that's why I think the game against you guys was a shock, because we'd been waiting for a performance and it had been brewing for a while. And then it just happened. It just so happened to be against you guys. They want to win the group. So I imagine that he wants to finish strong by winning the next two games. You have mentioned that, a lot of our players, aren't playing at the moment. I mean, if you look at the Premier League players, for example, Coleman, Doherty, Duffy, all aren't playing. Then you have, Hendricks, not the player he was. Howard's gone down to League One. Jason Knight's playing in League Two. Malumbi's playing for West Brom in the Championship. Josh Cullen has gone to Burnley in the Championship as well. Then up front, Ogbenny has had a good start to the season. Obafemi's been in and out because he's kind of sulking over a move to Burnley from Swansea. Troy Parrott's been okay, hasn't been scoring. Scott Hogan's coming in off a good week with Birmingham last week, scoring a hat-trick. Callum O'Dowd has enjoyed a good start to the season with Cardiff, and that's why he's called back in. And then Callum Robinson's just gone to Cardiff on loan from West Brom. So, if you look at the squad, I mean, I haven't seen the Scottish squad, but I'm sure from your point of view, it's not something you're exactly fearing when you kind of look at that.
I don't know, Paul. Pretty nervous, mate. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Okay, right, fine. We need to address it. The last game, it was a proper hammering in Dublin, wasn't it? On a day that I guess
Paul said it was a shock for him. It was a shock for us.
That's what I was going to ask. I mean, yeah, exactly that. Where did this result come from? And did it really kind of blew the group open, didn't it?
I think I've been at all the games since Kenny's been there, I've been lucky enough to work at the games, and I've watched us on like numerous occasions where if we had got the first goal, we would have won games. But ultimately, we just weren't scoring goals. And he's tried so many different variations of strikers. Adam Ida, Aaron Connolly, Scott Hogan, David McGoldrick, all these players and stuff like that. And we were playing nice football, but we just didn't score. And then people at home were like, "This is awful. This is the worst game I've ever watched," just purely because they watch football differently, in the sense that if you don't win the game, you've played badly, if that makes sense. They don't watch the actual performance. And I do think Stephen Kenny had harped on about it numerous times that, the performance was there. It's just ultimately we weren't scoring the goals. I just think on the day, everything just seemed to click, and it was the first time it properly clicked.
I need to ask about Shane Duffy, because he's also much maligned from his time in Scotland. How come, in your opinion, he looks so much better in the English Premier League than he does in Scotland?
Well, the only thing, and everybody says the same thing about it, do you know what I mean? I love Shane Duffy. All Irish fans love Shane Duffy. With Ireland, he even throughout that spell at Celtic, he was still quite good at Ireland, even though we weren't doing well. But he was still actually doing well for us when he was brought in. Sometimes he was dropped, and rightly so. He wasn't good for Celtic, and admittedly, he said that himself. But I just think it's with the, a lower block. He's obviously more effective for teams and defensively, and I think with Celtic, they're obviously on the front foot in games. They're expected to win games, and I think he was caught a good few times with a high line, and he's never really played in a team that have been dominant. If you look at Ireland, we've always been underdogs in games, except for the real minnows, but more often than not, we're the underdogs and we're not expected to go out and take its teams. So he's obviously always done well in that case. And then with like Brighton and stuff like that, I just think he's one of those players where he's just very focused. And when you said he can't play, I think he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder and he wanted to show, and I think he wanted to prove that he still had it at the top level going back to Brighton, and he just kind of went in with a new attitude, and it just seemed to kind of flourish from there. Like I would know Shane's family and stuff like that, and they did say like he was going through an extremely difficult time during COVID, and when he was up at Celtic, he was kind of locked away in an apartment, and you couldn't even go and have, like a meal with your teammates or anything like that, because COVID was so rampant at that time. He wasn't even able to go and kind of, hang out with his teammates. So it must have been a very lonely period for him. I think he lost his grandmother as well as his father. So he just, from what I hear anyway, he just was up there at the wrong time.
That's it from us. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks to Laura and to John. Thank you to Andrew Todos and to Paul Nealon. I hope you two are crying football tears over the weekend. But yes, please, if you like this, subscribe, add a little like to whatever you can, and put a little comment on Apple Podcasts or whatever you do. We'll be back next Tuesday. So until then, cheerio.